First class on Flight 812 was calm until Lamar Johnson stepped aboard. A tall black man with a quiet confidence, holding a ticket for seat 2A. But to Trent Davidson, lounging arrogantly across that seat, Lamar was nothing but a janitor in the wrong place. "This ain't your seat. Move back to coach." Trent snapped, his voice dripping with contempt. Lamar didn't flinch. He simply raised his boarding pass. Proof no one wanted to see. The flight attendant looked uneasy. "Sir, maybe economy is better for you," she said softly. Lamar's hand slipped inside his coat, fingers brushing a silver medallion, a symbol of power few could imagine. No one noticed except one man 3 rows back whose breath caught. Because Lamar Johnson isn't just a passenger. He's a man with a past that commands respect and fear. What happens when a former kingpin claims what's rightfully his? Watch closely. This is more than a seat dispute. Hit subscribe to real-life stories new. You won't want to miss what happens next. Lamar Johnson didn't argue or raise his voice. He simply took the empty seat the attendant offered, placing his suitcase beneath the seat in front of him and folding his hands, expression unreadable. The cabin was restless now. The subtle luxury of first class, the clinking glasses and murmured conversations had given way to something sharper, almost electric. Heads tilted in his direction. A mother hushed her child. Across the aisle, a businessman in an expensive suit fidgeted with his tie, pretending to work, but his eyes flickered back to Lamar every few seconds. Trent, the self-appointed gatekeeper of seat 2A, sprawled wider across the leather, boots pressed arrogantly against the bulkhead. He grinned, tossing a look over his shoulder to gauge the audience, then said just loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear, "Man, some people just don't know their place, huh?" Lamar didn't respond. He kept his attention forward, gaze fixed out the window as the jet's engines roared to life. But even as the plane rumbled down the runway, the discomfort lingered, thicker than the scent of cologne and recycled air. The old man in row 3, Robert, kept stealing glances at Lamar. His expression a puzzle of recognition and disbelief. Lamar felt the weight of that stare but didn't acknowledge it. Instead, he pressed his thumb gently against the edge of the medallion hidden in his pocket. A gesture no one noticed except Robert. Once airborne, the tension shifted but didn't dissolve. The cabin settled into a restless quiet, broken by Trent's steady stream of comments. "Hey buddy, if you need some tips on folding napkins, let me know. I can show you how it's done up here." He laughed, looking around for approval, but most faces stayed turned away. The flight attendant passed by offering drinks, her hands trembling as she poured. She couldn't meet Lamar's eyes. Trent wasn't satisfied with silence. He leaned back, tossed his bag into the aisle. "Oops. Could you grab that for me?" His tone was syrupy, insincere. The bag slid and bumped into Lamar's leg. For a moment, Lamar just looked at it. He picked it up with deliberate care, stood and returned it, setting it upright beside Trent's seat. He didn't say a word. There was a shift in the air, an expectation that something should happen, that someone should intervene. Instead, it was Robert who broke the spell. He stood, steadying himself with a seat back, and approached Lamar, ignoring the looks of surprise from those around him. "Excuse me, sir," Robert said quietly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but was your name ever Elias?" Lamar's eyes flickered, jaw set. He hesitated, then answered low but clear. "Not anymore." Robert's lips parted, his voice trembling. "You saved my life, Leo." 1997. A hush fell, rippling through the first-class cabin like a cold draft. Trent's phone, forgotten in his hand, trembled. The attendant froze mid-step. Lamar held Robert's gaze, memories flashing behind his eyes. A dozen lives ago, a world he'd spent years escaping. He nodded, slow and somber. Trent, who'd been so bold just moments ago, suddenly looked small, out of place, unsure whether to laugh or shrink away. His mask of confidence began to crumble. Robert placed the hand gently on Lamar's shoulder, his eyes misting with old gratitude. "I never got to thank you," Lamar gave a small nod, voice rough. "You're safe now." The moment was raw, unfiltered, and everyone in the cabin felt it, like watching the tip of an iceberg, not knowing how deep it ran. Suddenly the PA system crackled. "Is Mr. Lamar Johnson on board?" Please come to the front galley. The request sliced through the stillness. Lamar rose, moving through the narrow aisle with quiet authority. As he reached the galley, 2 air marshals stood waiting, their presence sending a shiver through the crew. One of them, a stocky man with cropped hair, spoke first. "Sir, we've had a report of disruptive behavior." Lamar met his eyes unwavering. He reached into his coat, pulled out a slim black folder and opened it for the marshals. Inside, an old Interpol credential. Next to it, a document with a name circled in red. Trent Davidson. Lamar's voice was steady. The words chosen with care. "Tell your people at JFK. The leak you're looking for is on this flight." The older marshal's eyes widened in recognition. "You're the witness." Lamar nodded. "The one who built the case." Behind them, Trent tried to shrink into his seat as he watched the galley exchange, color draining from his face. The attendant who doubted Lamar now stood rigid and silent by the curtain. Her previous confidence replaced by a visible uncertainty. Lamar returned to his seat, every step radiating control. He reached into his pocket and drew out a worn envelope, extracting a faded photo. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, holding a tulip and beaming with a smile that cut through time. He studied it, lips pressed tight, before placing it gently on his tray table. The mood in first class had changed. Where there had been mockery, now there was a heavy, uneasy respect. Trent fidgeted, eyes darting, sweat beading at his temples. The other passengers, once passive, now watched with silent curiosity, piecing together fragments of the drama unfolding before them. Lamar stood and made his way back up the aisle. He stopped at Trent's seat, gaze level. "I'm not here for revenge," he said, voice low, each word carrying weight. "But you need to understand, power isn't something you wear like a suit. It's what you do when no one is watching." He set a thick sealed envelope in Trent's lap. "Federal indictment. Every detail they needed to put you away." Trent's composure shattered. His mouth worked soundlessly, panic flickering in his eyes. "What is this?" he whispered, voice barely audible. Lamar leaned in so only Trent could hear. "I've brought down men far more dangerous than you. And none of them mock the people who keep the world moving." Trent's hand shook as he opened the envelope. Inside, page after page, his own signature, emails, evidence enough to end his career. He swallowed audibly. The flight attendant approached, still unable to meet Lamar's gaze. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know." Lamar shook his head. "Just remember next time. Don't judge someone's worth by their seat or their skin." She nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes, and slipped away. The announcement came over the speakers once more. "We'd like to thank a special passenger on board for his service to justice and public safety." The captain's voice was calm, yet carried a weight that wasn't lost on the cabin. The engines hummed as the plane began its descent. 2 plainclothes agents appeared, making their way quietly but directly toward Trent. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He simply handed over his phone and let himself be led out of the seat. Hands cuffed, face pale and drawn. Passengers watched, some in shock, others with quiet satisfaction. Lamar remained in his seat, eyes closed, hands resting on the photo of his daughter. Robert paused beside him before disembarking, offering a silent, grateful nod. Lamar acknowledged it with a look, a bond formed in hardship and remembered in gratitude. The last to leave was the attendant, who stopped, her voice shaking. "Thank you for your patience, sir," Lamar replied simply. "Thank you for seeing me now." As the cabin emptied, a sense of justice hung in the air. Trent's downfall was public and absolute. No one doubted who truly belonged in first class anymore. But for Lamar, the real victory was quiet. It was the knowledge that dignity, tested and proven, speaks louder than any insult, and that sometimes the world does notice when someone stands their ground. The story was no longer about a seat. It was about who we choose to be when power, prejudice, and history collide, and about the man who refused to be silent, no matter the cost. As Lamar stepped into the bright terminal, the rush of travelers faded into the background. He didn't glance back. In his pocket, the photograph of his daughter was safe, a quiet reminder of the journey that shaped him and the strength he found along the way. Outside, Robert waited beside a row of seats, offering a simple nod. No words were needed. For a moment, the noise and judgment of the world slipped away, replaced by understanding and mutual respect. Lamar took a steady breath, feeling the weight he'd carried for years begin to lift. The scars of old battles were still there, but now they felt like proof of survival, of rising above the labels others tried to pin on him. The injustice, the humiliation, the silent endurance, it all became fuel for a future no one else could define. He moved forward not with anger but with the quiet conviction of a man who knows his own worth. The lessons lingered. True power doesn't come from titles or seats. It lives in the courage to stand your ground, to choose dignity, and to let your story speak for itself. A child stared up at him as he passed, eyes wide with curiosity. Lamar smiled softly, giving a gentle nod. An unspoken promise that no one's future is written by the prejudice of strangers. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Real Life Stories New. Your support helps us bring real voices and true strength into the light.